everybody, and welcome into Tuesday edition of the Casual Sports Podcast. As you can see, I'm Alec Caberna. Join with me once again this week is Mike Wolfgang. And for those of you not aware, we're bringing it back local this week and for the at least foreseeable future. And we're going to be talking volleyball today. Got a couple of good matchups going on in the network tonight and a pretty high-profile soccer game. So we're going to be getting a little bit into that. Please stick with us. We're learning how to talk about this kind of stuff more on the fly. I've only started calling volleyball in the last month. So terms, keep with us. Don't give up hope just because we're going to be a little slow to get into this. We'll see how far this takes us. And as the week goes on, the shows add up. We're going to be able to get a little bit more in-depth, especially once both Matt and I see a little bit more of some of these games. Mike, I think you're going to be writing about them a little bit from what I've heard as well. So, it's going to be a learning curve at first. Don't expect what you see on Power Hour and Running Point just yet. We're going to be behind. We're going to catch up, though. We're going to do our best. So I guess without any further ado, let's take it in here. We're going to go live games because – a lot of the other groups, they kind of talk more about the players, that kind of thing. What we've done, what we were going to transfer. We've always talked games, what's happening today, reporting, the sports casually. That's what we are. That's what we do. So we're going to continue to push it that way. We're going to talk about the games going on tonight. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the outcomes tomorrow and all of that sorts. But first game I want to talk about, Edgewood going on the road to take on Orange. Edgewood, they've pretty much won one, lost one, lost one. Their last four games. Before that, they won two, lost two. So they've been a real roller coaster so far. They haven't had a very easy schedule. They've had some big name schools throughout there. Orange, same thing, playing a little bit farther up north. They're going up against some schools that not too bad at volleyball, but they have won their last two out. And after losing 5 straight to begin the season, now they have a home game coming off of back-to-back 3-0 wins, and Edgewood's going to come into this game after their last 3 games, each go 5 sets, including their game last night. So when you talk about fatigue and how that's going to impact on the game tonight, I think Orange is going to have that, especially because Edgewood, they played an 8 o'clock game yesterday, and now today they play a 6 o'clock game. So they play deeper, and now they have to start earlier than a normal 7 o'clock time. So it's definitely going to be a challenge, I think, for Edgewood to come back in fully prepared after really getting into it last night against Madison, the 3-2 loss for them in that game. They didn't put up how every set broke down, unfortunately. But we've seen competitive play out of this Edgewood team. In the state of Ohio, they're ranked 308th. Considering how many teams are in the state, that's really good. Orange is coming in. They're ranked 600th in the state, but they are a Division II team. So you do have that going for them. It's been a rough start. Both these teams, I think, want to be better than what their record has shown so far. But, Mike, I think Edgewood has a little bit of the edge coming into it. And in non-conference action, they have struggled. They're 2-3 in non-conference play. So I think that's going to, hurt them. They're going into another non-conference matchup. And I think that fatigue's going to hit them a little harder. But I think Edgewood probably still has the edge going throughout this game.
So when you were running through your schedule, I was trying to pull it up what you were talking about. I had something else. What was their pattern, Edgewood? They started out with a win or a loss, you said?
Well, so Edgewood, 2 wins, 2 losses. And then they go win, loss, win, loss.
And that's a pattern you want to fall into.
Right.
Because you want to establish some type of momentum and some type of run. You got to get on a run and separate yourself from some people. But I think you mentioned kind of the edge towards Edgewood. I kind of want to flip it and say it's probably close towards Orange, because according to the website, in Orange. And where's that located again? You said it's up north, but I never even heard of Orange High School. Yeah, so that's a little bit. That's a little bit of a distance for Edgewood to kind of travel to on the road, and I think it's.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up how far it is between these two.
I don't have the exact distance, but just to travel anywhere, it's hard to travel anywhere. But when you're a team doesn't have much consistency, or at least so how it's gone so far to start the year, kind of to travel like that a little bit, it doesn't really help you out. But I'd say that for that part, it probably goes towards Orange, but
it's a full hour between them. It's 57 miles.
Yeah, and that's tough.
So it's going to be a long bus ride.
Yeah, I think that's tough for a team that's still. Well, actually, I mean, both teams are trying to find themselves too. I think, for what you mentioned, both teams really need this game because I don't think where they want to be at. Every team wants to win every game, but you can't. And I think that's it's going to be a scrappy game. I probably can see that happening because both teams are in the same boat.
Right. Well, not to mention, that's an hour in a car.
Yeah.
Now you're in a bus.
In a bus.
And so that means, you got a 5 o'clock game or a 6 o'clock game. You have to be on the buses by probably 3:30, 4 o'clock. They're getting right out of school, getting onto a bus, going an hour on a bus on a cold, rainy day off the lake. It's going to be, I think, a rough night. And this is one of those problems when you talk about travel in this region, because we have so many teams close together. But then in the same conferences, or not, this is obviously a non-conference game, but you have teams that can play each other that are just so far apart, but still, right next to one another. So this is kind of one of those matchups. You're going from, the very northeast corner, and you're still staying on the east side of Cleveland. I think, myself included, you forget how much space there is past Cleveland over to the Pennsylvania border, because in my mind, it's Cleveland border, not much else there, but there's a lot going on, and that's obviously a long distance to travel. And I think with the fatigue now building up for Edgewood, going 5 times on the season until their 5th set, they're matching just about anybody with that. Liberty also in 5-set games so far in the season, and I saw it last night with them. So I was calling their game against Warren G. Harding. The fatigue really start to build up. They had, their best players, their spikers, kind of rubbing their shoulders, trying to roll it out the entire time. When you're playing this much volleyball this soon into the season, I think it does start to add up. We're almost about a month in there. So now it's the real time. Fatigue is going to take that first bite. And when you've had Orange have 3 straight games that only went 3 sets, they've only gone past 3 sets twice on the season. They lost both those games that came early on. But their last 2 against Harvey, a game that was on the road, they won it 3-0. Harvey's 2-8, so no, they're not a great team. And then they beat Brush again 3-0, and Brush, a team that's 1-6. So this is their hardest matchup in a while for Orange. And I think you go into this matchup, and you've played really hard teams in Hawken, in Chagrin Falls, and Geneva, and Cuyahoga Heights, and Euclid. You played a lot of hard games. Hawken, I think, still undefeated. So Orange, they've had a really hard schedule. And I don't think that record truly reflects what they are, because when you saw them play teams with similar records, Harvey and Brush, they smoked them. So I think this Orange team a lot better than their record entails. And I think fatigue is going to hit Edgewood, plus that long travel. This Orange team, they're going to get to kick back, relax, get that homework done out of the way. Edgewood just has so much on their plate coming into the night. I got Orange.
That's why I'm going Orange too. I think it's more so that obviously they do kind of look like the better team, but I think it's more, like I said last time, that it's more of just the psychological part, that the travel, it's a school night. I know teams deal with this all the time, but it's extra travel this time. It's kind of wanting to get things over. I don't want to say speed the game up, because you're obviously going there to try to win, but kind of try to get it done as soon as possible, because then you have to travel an hour back too. Come home on a school.
Yeah, one thing I think's for certain, though, this isn't going to be a 3-set game. With the way Edgewood has gone to 5 sets 5 times on the season, I think you have the likelihood they do so again. That when they go 5 sets, that definitely puts Edgewood back in favor, because they have that experience of going deeper into the match. And as I mentioned, Orange has only gone to 4 sets as their max twice, and they lost both of those 3-1. So they did those against some harder opponents. This probably, I think, the most even matchup they've had on the schedule when you talk about how they're going to match up. So I think it's going to be a really fun matchup. Orange, I'm giving them the edge here just because there's a lot going on for Edgewood. But if this goes deep, you have to rely on that experience with Edgewood. They probably have the better shot of pulling that out, going with so much experience in the late game.
Because they've been through a grind of a game a little bit more often than Orange. So, yeah, I mean, if they want to win it, they got to try to make it a little bit of a deeper. Obviously, I'm not saying because I'm just saying because they have that more experience. Because
and keep this in mind, when you go deep too, you're going to be seeing a lot of new faces out there that you don't necessarily see in those that first or second set. You start hitting set 3 and 4, and you get a lot more rotational players coming in and finding roles and having to play bigger minutes. So it really comes down sometimes in these later games to who has more depth on their bench and who has more ladies that can just go in and fill in long enough for your starters, your star players to come back out there, because very few people I have seen in the limited amount of time I've called volleyball go out there and be able to play really for the one entire set, let alone 3. I haven't seen anybody stay in the game for the entire time. You have to take breaks. It's just like basketball. You can have a superstar player, but eventually they have to come out. And that's the same thing with volleyball. Eventually you have to make a change, or, sometimes they're not the best servers. So you have to take them out of the game when, it comes back, when the rotation comes back around to them. So depth is really huge going into this game, I think, for both teams.
And obviously the fatigue part of it too, and just being conditioned, because I don't know too much about volleyball too. Just like you're saying, you're starting to try to get into it. This talking about it, try to make me learn some of it too. But
right,
with any sport too, if you're going into longer games, obviously you want the rest. You want to get games done as soon as possible because you want to avoid extra parts of the game. But that helps some teams in some ways. And I'm saying tonight with Edgewood, if it gets in that position, not guaranteeing they're going to win if it goes longer, a couple more sets, but that kind of works in their favor according to how they've gone this year.
Yes, it does. Our next game up, Salem and West Branch. This is going to be a really hard game for Salem to come into. They're a decent squad, but West Branch right now, they're clicking on a lot of cylinders. 6-3, 3-1 in the Northeastern Buckeye Conference. They have lost their last 2, however, at home. So this, their 3rd straight home game. Before they head back on the road against Minerva tomorrow, they're looking to pick up a big win here. It's an earlier game as well, so Salem has to come in a little bit earlier, much like we said with Edgewood. Not nearly as far, I don't think, to travel. I think it's still probably 35, 40 minutes, though, on that bus. So having that early game, coming right out of school, getting on the bus and going, you could see that wear and tear again from Salem, which I don't think is going to favor them going into a game. They've lost 3 straight, all in 3 sets, and West Branch, and I know both teams coming in on that losing streak, but we saw very early on in the season against some pretty good teams, West Branch really got things rolling. They've slowed down. That momentum slowed down a bit, but I think they're still in a good position to continue pushing. And Salem in the state ranked 504th. They're ranked 141st in Division II based off that strength of schedule. And West Branch 187th in the state, 64th in the same division. So a big gap between them. It's going to be hard tonight for Salem if they want to pull this off. The thing I've noticed with volleyball is you can't guarantee anything. It's almost more chaotic than baseball at times, it seems, with how a team can come out and really shock some people. I saw it last night. Warren G. Harding hadn't won a single set on the entire season, and they forced it to 5 against Liberty. Ultimately came up short, and they're still winless, but they went from not scoring at all the entire season to forcing it deep. So don't guarantee anything, but I think I like West Branch a little bit more in this matchup. They've had a little bit of a harder schedule, and they've came out with more wins out of it. So you have to give them the edge.
I think I'm glad you brought that point, because I've said this a couple other times, but when we were talking national sports a lot more, that like the only sport you really can get, obviously we didn't see that too much this weekend in college football. I was going to say, like, football is probably the only sport you can pretty much, or basketball too, that you pretty much know who's going to win. Baseball, volleyball, hockey, it's anything could happen, like you just touched on. I think that's what makes it interesting. And I mean, obviously, all figures kind of point towards West Branch in this game, but crazier things happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to that game I had last night, Liberty won the first set 25-7. The next 3 sets were all within 2 or 3 points of one another. So it's not even that you can go out there and have a great first set and, okay, that team's going to win it. Because after that happened, I was like, all right, Liberty's going to have this in the bag. I'm heading home early. And then as they've been nicknamed now the Cardiac Cats, since they've gone so deep so many times and have given their fan base quite the heart attack, and their head coach, especially Kelly Barley, over there on the sidelines. I think at some point she's just going to need to sit down, because she's over there mind exploding after what's going on sometimes, especially giving up some of the big runs they did last night. But I like West Branch in this game. I think they'll take it.
I'm going to flip and go Salem. Kind of for the things I just talked about. You just don't know.
Right. You just don't. This one, next game we're talking about, it's going to be very hard to pick, because I think both teams are pretty good. I know one team's a lot better, or at least perceived to be a lot better. Austintown Fitch ranked 4th in this week's YSN Power Rankings. Week 2 of that. You can go check that out on YSN's Twitter page. They also dropped football, and I believe DJ Oakley on Power Hour is going to be talking about both of those next at 3 o'clock, so make sure you tune in there as well. But Fitch coming in 7-1. Their only loss is to Lakeview, who's the number 1 team in the power rankings. You look at this team, and on paper, they should absolutely run away with this thing. They have won 3 straight games in 3 sets. They got forced to 5 against Strongsville, But then to start the season, 3 straight wins with only 3 sets being played on the season. 22 sets won, 5 sets lost, and those 2 set losses came in back-to-back games at the end of the last month. So no one has taken them past 3 sets in this month. Canfield, I think, has the best shot to do it because I do think they are a pretty good team. They're 5-4, undefeated in conference play. Both of these teams are, so a real battle for first. And if anyone's going to knock off Fitch, I think it has to be Canfield, because you look at Fitch later in the season, they don't have a ton of, big names coming up. They got a few, but Canfield's one of those teams. They're going to have 2 shots at this, being in conference, to knock it down a peg. We'll see if they can get it done. But you look at Canfield coming into this, they've had some really hard matchups. I mean, losses against Girard, Hoban, Western Reserve, and Mineral Ridge. A lot of teams that you look at right now. Girard's ranked 3rd on the volleyball power rankings. Mike, shout out your high schooler right there. And, Western Reserve, they're ranked 8th. So now you're going to send this Canfield squad up against another firing squad. Mineral Ridge also ranked on that power rankings this week. So you look at Canfield's schedule, all of their losses are against top 10 teams, and they beat the number 10 team in the power rankings a week ago in McDonald, and they didn't just win them. They won it 3-0. So they swept that set, and you look at it. Okay, they've had some struggles early on, but now they get one back. And you come into a game against Fitch, a program that I think you have to look at as, it doesn't matter what sport they're in, they're going to be going out there and they're going to be playing it really great. And they have 3 girls that have been dominant at the net in Jocelyn Jordan, Afton Roby, and Jordan Smith, all over 40 kills. Jocelyn Jordan leads it with 149 kills on the season, and they're getting some great setup play from Riley Simons, who has 266 assists. That is insane. They're having great serves going along. They're playing really solid up at the net. This is a Fitch team that they check every box. When you go in, you go, all right, I want to build the perfect volleyball team. They are checking every single box. When you're looking to build it up, they have size, they have speed, they have finesse. And that's one of the things I've noticed in volleyball over the last couple of weeks. As much as power goes into it and having skill and being able to hit it right every time, there's a certain part of finesse to the game where, you kind of have to trick your opponent on what they think you're about to do, and then you go somewhere completely else with what's happening. And I see it a lot. And the best setters, as you see here with this Fitch squad, they're also normally pretty high up on the kill list. So that's part of what you have, because sometimes that second hit, they go into it, they just go and tap it right over the net. No one's expecting it. And I've seen it work quite often so far in the season. So this Fitch team, they check all the boxes. No one's touched them in a while. I think Canfield, likelihood is this. I think they take it to 4 sets and drop it. But I think those are a very competitive 4 sets. I don't think Fitch is going to pull away in any of them. But I think Canfield, they've been solid so far in the season. They've just had a really hard matchup, and McElroy has been a monster at the net blocking. She has 22 blocks, and they also have 3 girls that are over 10 blocks so far in the season. So as the year goes on and on, you're going to see a lot more of that with this team playing so well at the net. And they also have 3 girls over 60 kills so far in the season. So 9 games in, numbers, I'm sure they want to see a little higher. They want to see more wins, but conference play, it's the one that ultimately matters the most, and both teams come in undefeated. So I think it's a real coin flip on who's going to take it, but I do have to side with Fitch just because they have been so good. But this one's being played in Canfield, and those fans, doesn't matter what sport it is, they turn out.
I got to side with Fitch as well, but the part on Canfield side is obviously, like you said, tough matchups. Are getting another tough one tonight, but eventually when you have a schedule that you're going to keep playing tough teams over and over again, eventually things are going to break through. You're going to get used to playing that high level competition. You're going to get used to getting yourself up for that type of competition. I don't know if it's going to happen tonight, but I think eventually you're going to see them kind of break through when things kind of, because they play tough teams. Canfield, they're in a tough conference too. So you're going to keep coming. These teams are going to keep coming out after. You're going to have to keep getting yourself up. Some teams live up to it, some teams don't. But I think Canfield, the programs that they have, they'll find a way to get through these tough games. But I got to go with Fitch tonight.
our next matchup featuring our number one team, the Lady Bulldogs, number one in play so far, undefeated. They are now 8-0, 6-0 in the NE8, have only lost 2 sets on the season. They dropped a singular set to Fitch when they beat them, and they dropped a singular set to Girard when they beat them as well. So Lakeview holds wins over 2 of the top 4 teams in the region, according to our power rankings here on YSN. And, as much as I thought about Fitch checks all the boxes, these check all the boxes twice. This is a really, really good team. Another group that's really great at the net. Brooke Schneider killing it with aces right now, 23 on the season. Tara Lytle's at 121 kills, and then Reagan Price right behind her with 94. So this is a team that they're playing really solid. And, you even look at the schedule and go, all right, has it just been easy? No, not really. I mean, you go up against the Cardinal Mooney squad to open up the season, who is now 5-3, hasn't lost in the Steel Valley, and you won that 3-0. Then the following week, you go into Hubbard. You host Hubbard, a team that, they're 2-6, but you win in 3 sets like you should. They took care of business. They won the game they should have. Then they took care of business again against Niles. And then came the real big test of the season in Fitch and Girard, and they pulled both of them. They go in and they dominate. They even went into Girard and took that game. Then, you go on the road against Poland, another team, 5-win team, and they take care of business. You do it against Jefferson. You do it against Struthers. Now they have South Range tonight. And South Range has the benefit of this being a home game, but when you've seen them go against some of the similar teams, well, they went 5 sets against Hubbard. They went deep against Ursuline. They went 4 sets against Niles. They did win it 3-0 over Struthers, but then you also see, they lost in 3 sets to Jefferson, a team we just saw Lakeview take down like it was no problem. So you come into this game, South Range, their program, they have a shot. Doesn't matter, obviously, being in that Canfield region either. There's so many great athletes over there, and obviously a lot of people to pick from, being obviously they had to break it into 2 different schools in the same city. So there's a lot of talent in this region, and they're going to give Lakeview their best shot. But with what we've seen out of Lakeview right now, they are ranked 10th in the entire state of Ohio. They are ranked 2nd in Division III, and obviously number 1 in both the Max Preps rankings and the YSN rankings. This is the greatest team we have going on right now. And out of any group on your sports network this season to make a championship run, it's Lakeview, because you only see this dominance every now and then. And the level they are playing at is extraordinary. South Range, same division, they're ranked 72nd. So if they give Lakeview a shot here tonight, it's going to be huge. But I'm going Lakeview until they prove to this network and to their fans that they aren't just going to win every game.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. We say this all the time when we talk our shows, that you don't just get placed number 1 in the state of Ohio, where they're at too. You don't just get placed on accident. You actually have to be that good, and you actually have to prove that you're that good, and they've done it consistently. And I think, South Range, the only good thing they got tonight going for them is that it's in their gym. So I think that's a benefit. But again, when you're playing teams that are ranked this good, and our rankings in the state, that doesn't really matter where it's at. So I got to go Lakeview too.
Yeah, I mean, you have a Lakeview team that they've been just fine on the road. They've been really good at home. They're not going to struggle based on location. You might see South Range play better being at home. I think that's the one side of it. Being at home, your gym, your rhythm, your fans, you're used to the smells. Every gym smells different. So, you're used to the way the lights come down. When you're looking up to get that ball, you know where the lights are, you know where you're going to get blinded. They're going to have subtle home court advantages that you see, but Lakeview, a team we haven't seen struggle on the road. So I don't think this is the first day they struggle. South Range could very easily, or maybe not very easily, it's going to be a hard-fought battle. South Range, I think, could force it to 4 sets, but I think Lakeview is going to take this game. They have just been on fire.
And I think that, like I said, playing at home, that's an advantage for South Range, because when you're playing a team that's coming into your gym that everybody knows is better, that everybody says is better than you, how do you not get juiced up for that? Everybody gets juiced up for that. I mean, we're all human. We want to, in your own place, you want to beat the best team.
In order to be the best, you got to beat the best. South Range, they don't want to fall back to 500 either. They're 5-4. You know, they got over that hump, and you know they've lost a couple out. They don't want to go on this big losing streak and ultimately drop that good record they started out with. So I think they're going to have a little bit extra energy after dropping their last two. They were 5-2, and now they're 5-4. So I think it's going to be a tough battle. I don't think they're going to give in easily.
Yeah.
This next matchup, I think, is one that will be over relatively quickly. Girard's taking on Struthers in Girard as well. Girard 7-1. Struthers is 1-7. Girard is ranked third in the power rankings behind Crestview and Lakeview, as previously mentioned. And Struthers won game 1 of the season. They won it 3-0 against Lowellville. Lowellville, 2-7. They have won since that loss, but Struthers, they've lost 7 in a row, most of which came in conference. They lost 2 non-conference games to West Branch and Howland, but conference-wise, they lost to Poland, they lost to South Range, lost to Jefferson, lost to Hubbard, and they lost to Lakeview. You know, you can say, well, man, those are some really good teams, but if you're going to compete in this NE8, you really need to go out there and win some of those, especially if you're going to have a fighting chance to go in here against a team like Girard that we have seen rip through a couple of opponents now in a row. They went 5 cents against Hoban, a really good Hoban team coming out of Akron, and they beat Niles last Thursday. They beat South Range in 3 sets. They beat Poland in 3 sets, and they won one of the sets against Lakeview. So this is a team in Girard firing on all cylinders. You look at them state ranking, they're 37th. They're 11th in Division II right now, behind East Liverpool and Vermilion. So they're a really good squad, and it's going to take one hell of a night for this Struthers team to come in here and do something. They're ranked 148th in Division II, so they're a long ways back from where we see Girard at right now. I haven't seen any Struthers volleyball yet. Kills, they're being led by Scarlett Horvath with 29, which, good on her for leading the team. But you look around, and especially, you look over on the side of Girard, and, their kill leaders at 153. Their second kill leader is at 98, and their third kill leader is still at 40. So you have 3 girls all higher on this list than your top kill getter. That's going to be very hard to overcome tonight. And Metzka, she's been blocking it well at the net with 11. Once again, the top 3 blockers for Girard, all higher. So every statistical category, every measure, home court advantage, literally everything favors Girard going into this game. That's why I'm taking them.
And their only loss, too, is against the team we just talked about with Lakeview. So,
oh, no, again, they lost against the top 10 team in the state. Okay.
And number one,
I think they'll take that.
Yeah, and number 1 with YSN. So that's nothing to be ashamed of. And they had that at home, too. I'm sure you want to win that one. But George, guys know I went there. They normally have strong volleyball teams. And I think this year it might be even stronger than the times I was there. So 7-1 so far. I obviously playing it. They do get pretty good crowds to that gym for volleyball too. I think it's going to be a tough place for any visiting team to go into. So I got to go Girard too.
Yeah, well, moving over into some conference action, the EOAC's leader in Wellsville is hosting the United tonight. Wellsville comes in 8-1, ranked 6th, on the YSN Power Rankings. United at 5-4, but keep this in mind, they've won their last 3. So some early struggles at the beginning of the season. They struggled to get over Columbiana. They struggled over East Palestine. They lost it to Salem in what was a close battle. And, East Palestine, 5-3 now on the season. So it's not necessarily bad losses either at the beginning of the year, just some hard games that they had to go through. And even Columbiana, they're a team that's 5-3 as well. So it was a hard start to the season, but this is a group that has really rebounded well. They've lost just once here in the month of September. They dropped it to Alliance, a team 3-6, got the better of them on one night. I don't think you can expect many slip-ups like that. They were on the road. It was a long drive. I cut them a little bit of slack because they came back to conference play, and they've done very well for themselves since making that return back into conference play. They're 4-2 overall in the EOAC. a conference that I think has really started to garner some attention now on the network as more of these teams are really showing up and showing out. So I really love this conference. Actually, it's one of my favorite ones to cover next to the MVAC. So this is a team in Wellsville. They're playing amazing. Presley Stokes with 169 kills. Alana Amato with 97 kills for Wellsville and 27 aces as well for Presley Stokes. 23 for Aubrey Ramsey, 22 for Alana Amato. You don't see many teams with a player over 20, and they have 3 over 20 when it comes to aces. They're playing lights out at the net. Alana Amato with 46 blocks, Brooke Hackney with 43 blocks. So this is a Wellsville team right now that firing on about all cylinders. They have lost just 5 sets on the season, 26-5. Now, they're really far back in terms of state rankings when compared to some of the other teams featured on YSN's power rankings, but that's only due to the fact that their strength of schedule is ranked at negative 4.4. So it's a department that, they've gone out and they've handled business. Their one loss came to Western Reserve at the beginning of the season and got forced to 5 sets in Western Reserve. They're 7-2. And they're featured here on YSN's power rankings. So they have one loss in the season that I think, it's a loss that I think you forgive, because since that game where they gave up 3 sets, they have given up just 2 set wins, and that came against Southern and Columbiana. So I think going into tonight, Wellsville has a steep advantage. It's a home game for them as well. But I think you have to factor in United. They've gotten on a run now, only lost once in the month, and only lost once dating back to the 30th of August. So I think putting that hot streak into proportion here, I think they have a much better shot than I think a lot of people are going to give them tonight. I think United has the chance to keep it close. Definitely has a shot, I think, to force 4 or 5 sets, given the hot streak that they've been on.
Well, and I think, too, the obviously playing well, a little bit of streak that you're on. Sometimes when you're on a hot streak and you go play somebody else in their own place, sometimes things happen too. Like sometimes during a winning streak, you beat a team that you probably shouldn't. And that's kind of what catapults you into finishing out, having a better year in the middle of the party or towards the end. So I actually kind of want to flip it here and go United.
Oh, that would be a huge upset if that comes through. We'll see if it can happen. I think you're definitely going to have quite a few people looking your way if you predict that upset, Mike.
I hope so. No, hey, first time talking volleyball on the show, and if I pick a good one, hey,
if you pick maybe one of the biggest upsets of the season, I think everyone's going to give you your credibility here.
We're here to stay.
I know you're just throw caution to the wind on it, but that's a bold move, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off.
We'll see.
Valley Christian coming in here tonight on the road against Columbiana. Valley Christian winless so far. They've won just a singular set. They have lost, obviously, 24 in that department. They go up against the Columbiana team that they're pretty good. You look at Columbiana at 5-3 coming here in the EOAC, 4-2 in conference play. They've won 17 sets, given up 12. Their losses, McDonald, the team, as mentioned, they're ranked 10th in the power rankings. They did lose to Southern, one team not on there, and then they lost to Wellsville, who we were just talking about, is 6th on this week's power rankings. So this is a squad tonight in Columbiana firing all the right cylinders, and a couple more wins, especially if they can make it a 3-0 night tonight, is really going to push them towards being a potential team that you're going to see in the next coming weeks. On the power rankings, they have Heartland Christian next. They have United, and then they have Ursuline. If you see them go on a continue this run coming off the Wellsville loss, their last time out in 4 sets, if you see them push it down, you see them go over Ursuline and then continue to play well in conference, I think this is a team, Columbiana, you're really going to see make a big step up, especially once we get later into the year. You close in on the playoffs. It's going to be a team that is going to come out there looking to dominate. They don't wow you in the stat department. They only have their team leader in blocks only at 5 and Danica Hallis. And their kill leader is just at 72 and Ava Heinreich. So they're not a team that is dominating at the net, but fundamentally sound. And when you can play with good fundamentals and keep that consistent, if you can keep your fundamentals consistent, you're going to win a lot of those late games. And they're a team that you've seen the last 3 times out against harder opponents. They've kept it close. They've kept it in their fundamentals, kept them in every single game. So there's a reason coaches are always preaching fundamentals.
Yep.
It wins games even when you're not playing. with the statistical numbers of the best, because at this point, hardly anyone's going to be matching those top 5 teams, top 6 teams, and what they've done statistically at this point of the season. But if you can come in here and just take fundamentals, one, I'm taking Columbiana in this game. Valley Christian, they've had it rough. They've had it very rough so far in the season, and I don't think those girls are going to be catching any breaks in this game tonight. Maybe they steal a set, but if Columbiana keeps up their fundamentals and we see the same performances we did out of their matchup against Wellsville that went 4 sets, in which they won the first set of the night 25-19, but then Wellsville came back and fundamentals slipped up for Columbiana and they only scored 8. But then the final 2 sets, they were within, 7 points and then 5. So if we see a similar performance to what they did in Columbiana minus the slip up there in the second set, Columbiana should take this one, no problem. I got the Clippers.
I agree too, and unfortunately for Valley Christian, looking at their schedule, it doesn't get any better after that either.
No.
So you got to play Wellsville again, United again. I think a couple other teams I saw, Southern again too. These 2 teams they didn't beat the first time, pretty much this first time through the schedule. So I think they'll get one eventually, but I don't think it's going to be tight. I got to go with you as well.
All right, well, we're actually going to flip gears here, change it over to soccer. We have one game going on the network tonight, and it's a good one. Boardman coming in 5-0-3, 5 wins, no losses, 3 ties on the season, taking on Canfield. 4 wins, 1 loss, as this is the first conference game for either team. So talk about starting conference play with a bang. This is like when the Big Ten in football comes out and they put 2 powerhouses to start out the year. You love to see this kind of matchup early on in the season because it just sets the table for the rest of the year. They won't see each other again until the end of the month. So Boardman with a real good shot, no losses. That's the one thing. They've had teams push it out against them. Crestview tied it at 2 apiece. Poland had them tied at 2, and they tied with Hoban at 3. So you look at this team, and man, they will fight tooth and nail with you every day, it seems. And in in the state of Ohio, they're ranked at 50th nationally. They're ranked 290th in soccer. I didn't even know they put out the national rankings for soccer on Max Preps, but apparently they do. And in Division 1, it's a team in Boardman ranked 31st. So they're a good team. Canfield doesn't have any rankings out. They might not have played enough games. I'm not 100% sure. Normally that's the reason why they're not out there. But they lost their first game of the season 3-0 to Kenston. Since then, beat Ursuline, beat Marlington, beat Dover, and beat Crestview. They've played less games than Boardman, just by a handful, 3 less games. And both teams going into conference play, both looking good. Now here comes the real test. Can you keep it up now that you're going into conference play? Can you continue to play with the pace that you had during the non-conference schedule? And most importantly, can you go in later on this week, especially in a team like Canfield, and take on a group like Fitch, who we know in every single sport they're going to be doing just fine. And both of these teams' next opponents are both Fitch. So this is going to be a real great scouting opportunity for the Falcons, who are 3-1-1. But Boardman and Canfield, you look at where they sit right now in the All-American Conference and what the records are. No team in this conference has more than a singular loss. So very competitive. And these become must-win games. Canfield doesn't have the offense of Boardman. Boardman nearly outscores him 2-1 at this point in the season with 3 extra games. But Canfield's defense in 3 less games has given up 1 less goal as well. So I would say defense is about on par, but the offense of Boardman, I think, gives them a little bit of an edge. It's in Canfield tonight, so it kind of leans that table back. I think this is going to be a real close one. I don't think I made up my mind who I think is going to take this just yet.
I have not either, but I think it's because, teams going on the road too. I usually tend to try to pick home teams, but I think the better team's on the road. That's why it's kind of hard to pick this one. But for that, I think I gotta just stay with. I'm not trying not to think too far into it. I think I'm just gonna roll with Boardman because they don't have any. 3 ties, but you don't have a loss, so it's pretty good start to the year too. So they're playing pretty good soccer. I think I gotta go with Boardman.
Well, Mike, to your point, they have no losses, but they have a handful of ties. How about this? I'm going to predict a tie. I think Boardman goes to 5-0-4 in this game. I think when you look at this, in the 2 teams, we're struggling this much. This is soccer. We can pick a tie. It's the only sport we talk about that
Yeah, I don't
you can
like
pick a
picking
tie
ties
to go
though.
into. I know nobody likes to pick it, but I think you have a very real possibility. And you look at Boardman's schedule and you look at trends. All right, 2 wins and a tie. 1 win, 2 ties. 2 wins. Well, now it looks like we're right on track to hit another tie with the way things are bouncing around. That's the way things have gone. Now, we haven't seen Canfield play in overtime or in a tie or anything like that. So we'll see how what goes on. But I'm going to go with the tie here. I know that kind of seems like the chicken way out. Oh, I think they're just going to tie it. Don't give me an edge anywhere. I'm not making a pick. It's a tie. But I think you have a very real possibility of it. And I can't wait to check back in tomorrow and be right, because that would be hilarious.
And it's not in all seriousness though, because I don't like picking ties either. But I think the matchup, it's not out of imagination to pick a tie here, because good matchup between two teams, and these are teams that pretty much play each other a lot in every sport. So familiar with each other. So I think it has that potential, but I just didn't want to pick a tie.
Don't worry. I don't think anyone's going to hate on you for not picking a tie. So
Yeah.
We got about 20 minutes left here on the show, and considering it is Tuesday, we're not getting rid of entirely everything from, the old show in the last year, but we are obviously focusing more on local stuff. But this last 20 minutes or so, we're going to flip it over into something that we want to continue to put out because we really enjoy doing it here on the show. So we're going to reserve the end of Tuesday shows to continue to put out our college football top 10. It gives us, an outlet twice a week to talk about college football a little bit here, because obviously that's what got us where we are. We're not going to isolate all of those fans either. So without any further ado, Mike, let's get into our college football top 10 to wrap out the show. At number 10, a team that, we've kind of seen slipping up, falling down. They're not impressing really anybody. They're just kind of hanging around, game managing right now. And that's the Clemson Tigers. And I think the big part of it with this team is you don't want to count them out because they're still undefeated and they haven't really given you a reason to this season, but they're also not impressive to watch. I mean, they beat Furman, an FCS team, 35-12. Yeah. Well, that's underwhelming. And they won week 1 against Georgia Tech, 41-10. Yeah, all right, they probably should have done that. And coming off of a 45.5 point spread going in against Furman, and you only beat them by 23 points. So yeah, they're going to drop in this week's rankings, but not out of it, because I don't think this is a team you're really going to be able to count out in Clemson, because they don't really have the hardest schedule. They're going to have a couple games. I'm no longer worried about NC State. I think NC State came in way overhyped into this season. I'll count myself victim of that. I was giving them the hype as well, and they haven't looked great. They've narrowed out the wins, but I'm not seeing it out of that Wolfpack. I mean, they struggled week 1 against ECU. They did bounce back last week against Charleston Southern, but I think that Wolfpack a little bit much now at the moment. But Wake Forest really becomes the one that you have to look at for Clemson, and then you can pretty much wait till the end of the year, and it's Notre Dame. And Notre Dame now, they're on their second string quarterback. So there's nobody on this Clemson schedule anymore. So you really have to continue to look at them. Clemson could become, and this is just based on strength of schedule, could become the first undefeated conference champion not to make the playoff.
Yeah.
In the Power 5. And I know that seems a little, out there, but if you see Ohio State and Michigan again go down to it, and the one game between them is that final game of the season, and they look great throughout the rest of the year, I think there's an argument to be made that both those teams get in with how well we've seen it so far. Then you look over the other side, Georgia and Alabama. If that, as we've seen before, comes down to a one loss between the two of them, we've seen they both get put in. So I think you have a very real possibility of 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams this season. And I think that's a big push of Clemson. They really just either need to go out there and just blow people out, or I don't know what helps them, because their quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei wasn't even the leading passer in this game, and they won by 23 points. He had 231 yards. His opponent in Tyler Huff had 256. This is a Clemson team that's not impressing the dirt they walk on.
Like I said, I think it's a team. I predict them to have a bounce back year this year, but in terms of what they had last year. I thought they could have had one loss or maybe go undefeated this year. I think it's still possible, but I kept saying I think it's a team that you're going to see them grind out a lot more games. I think that's against a team like Georgia Tech or at least early on, it seemed like it was going to be that way, but they pulled away. The previous game, again, I saw the score too, 35-12. I'm like, come on, you got to kind of. It's against a team that's probably worse than Georgia Tech, at least in terms of where they're at in conference play. But it's just a Clemson team that I still have them in my top 10. I had them at 9 in my own personal ones, but it's just not impressive. I think after the weekend we just had, there's not too many options to put in the top 10 because a lot of teams lost.
Right. No, we had a lot of teams drop out, and this early on, you kind of want to keep that fresh top 10 of, hey, these are no-loss teams. Let's give them the bump early on in the season and see how they ride it, because undefeateds only last for so long in college football. We finish with 3 or 4, and most of the time those are the group of 5 teams that finish undefeated rather than our Power 5 group. So Clemson, I don't think they're going to get knocked out so long as they keep winning. If they keep winning, they're going to have a spot in every single poll inside of the top 10. Likelihood is they all probably stay around 5 in major polls, as that's where they found themselves this week in the AP after having when they nearly covered half of the spread. So they were a little over half of what the spread thought they were going to be. That's the one problem. I had them at 8th just because with so much shuffling going on, I was like, can I really drop this team that far? So they were a little high for me. I think I'm going to continue to push them down unless we really see something out of them. But coming in at number 9, the USC Trojans jumping up in here. They cover the spread against Stanford, who gave them a good fight. But that first half, Stanford really just USC really pulled up 35-14. They were leading it. They let off the gas in the second half, and it was a big fourth quarter for Stanford that made these numbers look good. Caleb Williams jumped himself up into the Heisman conversation even more. Some places have him overtaking Bryce Young now for a second. CJ Stroud's retaken the first spot for the Heisman Trophy race again. But I think this is a team in USC. They're really starting to come along yet again. And this is a group that, we still have our doubts with what they're going to be this season. But again, look at that strength of schedule. They don't play anybody till mid-October, so they have a lot of time to get set.
It's a team that I said during the year I want to see them earn it, and I think the opponents they played so far, you wouldn't say that about, but they've done their job so far and go 2-0. We just talked about Clemson just winning their games. That's what they've done. And again, it's still hard to go. Second week of the year, you're going to play Stanford. I know they're not Stanford of old, but it's still hard to go play in conference, and they got a road win.
At number 8, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Razorbacks coming in after a win over a team that really thought they were the stuff in South Carolina. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, that South Carolina team, they were getting a lot of hype early in the season. They did give this Arkansas group a shot down there in that fourth quarter. They put up 21 points in the second half to bring themselves back into it. But Arkansas, when they needed to, their shootout was right there. And when you're working with a guy like KJ Jefferson, he moves the ball well, but it was their ground game that got it done. Sanders with 156 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns for this Razorback squad. They are a really good team. They covered the spread at home in Razorback Stadium, a hard place to come into, and doing it against the Gamecocks team, working with I'll say a decent quarterback in Spencer Rattler, who a lot of people forget made that transition over there. I think it was an impressive win and one they really needed to get here early in the season against the team that they are better than and needed to go out there and prove it, not just to, I think, voters and people like us, but to themselves. Going up against Cincinnati, nobody really knows what Cincinnati is quite yet. There's still question marks there, but they did that close in week 1. Everyone goes, all right, now is this Arkansas good or is this a bad Arkansas team against the bad Cincinnati? So we saw it turn around, and they got Missouri State this week, but then they have A&M and Alabama, Mississippi State, BYU the 4 weeks after that. So they have one more week to get ready, and then it's, off to the slaughterhouse for this Arkansas Razorback team. Yeah,
I've talked about it sometimes with teams in the Big Ten. Start out, even though it's against lesser opponents, start out
Maryland.
Just when you're Maryland too, and I think Rutgers too is in that kind of category. But I think it's kind of same here with Arkansas. Win your games, because you just ran through their upcoming schedule. It's going to be hard in the SEC. So take care of business now.
Yeah, Maryland, by the way, they beat Charlotte and Buffalo so far. So they haven't been everybody. They have SMU coming up this weekend.
Should be a good game, I think.
Yeah, it should be a good game, but should be 3-0 for Maryland before then they have to go Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue. All right, have fun. They get run through the gauntlet every year to start. It's just awful to watch. It's like, come on, give them like Rutgers and Indiana and Nebraska, and let's start them out like 6-0. Let's create some hype. Can we at least just get Maryland to a bowl game here with some easy games? But it never seems to happen. Coming in at number 7, a team I don't like whatsoever. I think they are very, very much overrated at the moment by both you and Matt and AP polls, but it's Oklahoma State, the Cowboys. Undefeated right now, and, I give credit. You can be undefeated, but I have not been impressed with Oklahoma State. They go up against Arizona State this past week, 34-17 in that game, and, they do win it. They do cover the spread. I'll give them credit there. But there's something. That week 1 game against Central Michigan, it's still sitting with
44 points. I didn't like that.
And it's sitting ugly because you look at the Chippewas this week. They lost to South Alabama 38-24. They put up 3 more touchdowns against Oklahoma State, a team that we're saying is 7th. And they put up 24 against South Alabama. South Alabama is not Alabama. They are not good. They beat Nichols in week 1, and they beat Central Michigan. They're going to go lose to UCLA this weekend, probably Louisiana Tech the week after that, and the Raging Cajuns the week after that. So there's that. It's just sitting with me until I see Oklahoma State really go in there and put in a really good defensive performance. This was good. This was their best. This was obviously the best of the season, and they held down a good Emory Jones from Florida in this Arizona State offense. So they did well, but they're recovering from losing a really good defensive coordinator to Ohio State. This is where Jim Knowles came from. It was a top 5 defense last year. And I don't think Spencer Sanders is going to be leading this team to victories if they don't have good defensive performances like we saw in this game.
That's the one thing I didn't like, too, the 44 points against Central Michigan. It's a team, like you said, struggled in their last matchup, but I don't know. I think Oklahoma State, where they were in the preseason, albeit it has not been pretty so far, they've won their 2 games. So that's the positive part about them.
Right. At number 6, a team I think you have to be impressed with. You have to be impressed with the Kentucky Wildcats. Just get rid of the sentence. I don't care. But the Wildcats, man, they go in there into the swamp, mind you. Mike, you can call me out for this one last week because I said there was no chance Kentucky was going into the swamp and winning it. And you said it. Just wait until we talk about this next week and it happens. And it did. So you were right. Will Levis, the mayonnaise maniac, got it done somehow against Florida. It was close in the beginning. The Gators had them 16-13. And then second half was all Kentucky, and Gainesville went home sad. Did you see the dinner party they had at Kentucky last night? They ate a gator.
Yeah.
How savage of a moment is that?
Yeah. I haven't
Bacon wrapped
I'd
gator.
Like to try it.
I think I've had gator nuggets. I think they're a little chewy.
I've had the nuggets too, and I've had like gator jerky, but no, with Kentucky, I think
I want a gator steak.
Yeah, that'd be really, really good. But I think with Kentucky, though, the reason why I kind of have them where they're at is because I think after the first week with Florida beating Utah, they jumped all the way up to the rankings. So by that standards, if you're going to have them where they were at, Kentucky getting a win over them on the road at Florida's place, they deserve to be where they're at.
Right. And my continued thought on that, because it's similar with Kentucky, is I think you have to push those first couple rankings out of your mind. Every week this early in the season, same with YSN's power ranking. You kind of just have to eliminate old rankings. Don't take that into account. Re-rank these teams every week. Look at them individually. All right, what have you done? Well, what have you done in those first 2 weeks? Where can I put you? And that right now, Kentucky, to me, I have them in the same spot as you, Mike, at 7. But I have them right behind both Arkansas and Oklahoma, who is number 5 on our rankings this week. The Sooners, they're getting it done. And that's all I can really say because they haven't played anybody. But they're getting it done, and they're doing it the way they are supposed to. So that's what I have on Oklahoma as we're coming down to our final 5 minutes, and we have our big 4 teams left.
I always say this Oklahoma, too. They don't always impress me, but they find a way to get it done.
Yeah, they won by 30 against Kent State. Yeah, they should have put up a lot more. But 33-3, and we see that Kent State, they go into a lot of Power 5 schools, and they shock them with their defense. Yep. They don't necessarily have offense in Kent State, but they've had some defenses that have given some problems to your Penn State too a couple times.
Yeah, a couple. Yeah, the MAC teams are tough.
Yeah, I love the MAC. It's fun. At number 4, we hit the Big Ten. Michigan, the Wolverines, kind of the same thing with Oklahoma. They've done their job. And J.J. McCarthy won the starting job, went 11 for 12, 229 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors team. What can you say? They had 25 guys transfer in the offseason. They fired their head coach. Yeah, this was a game they should have won by a landslide. But the reason J.J. McCarthy won the starting job might not have been even his performance. Cade McNamara came out against the same team later in the game, went 4 for 6, 26 yards, and threw an interception. Cade McNamara lost the starting job. I don't even know if J.J. McCarthy had to win it because McNamara came out and was doo-doo, hot garbage.
I know it's been against Colorado State and Hawaii, but you just feel it kind of with Michigan this year. That, like, especially after making the quarterback change.
We feel it every year, though, with Michigan. They always give you the
I know, but
starts.
we said it last year, and they finally proved it.
They did.
I'm giving them the credit. I'm giving them the credit.
I gave them credit then. You have to earn it every year. You know,
well, I know. I understand that, yeah. But I'm just saying – I know it's in Colorado State and Hawaii, but so far only 17 points. I don't care who you're playing. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this Michigan team, they're not bad. And I think they definitely are going to give Ohio State their best shot again this year. I think it's going to be close.
They're going to make noise
once again. Once again, the Big Ten's coming down to the final week in November, as it should.
That's it.
As it should. I know you and Maya will be like, yeah, we want Penn State in that conversation, but Big Ten's always been decided Thanksgiving weekend between Ohio State and Michigan. It's just the way it goes.
Yep.
At number 3, taking the big slide this week, the Crimson Tide. They come out, but Mike, they barely beaten in unranked Texas, who somehow, despite losing, jumped Penn State and made it into the AP Top 25. So got to put that out there. But give credit to Texas because I think they should have won that game. That's obviously why they got that bump, is because they should have won that game. It's just weird to see a team lose and then them jump up a couple of spots. But Crimson Tide, bad. They're 2 Heisman candidates. Will Anderson, he has 1 sack so far in their first 2 games. He hasn't been there. And as I said, after week 1, he lost the Heisman. I don't think he has any chance at it now. Being a defensive player, you have to be insane every single week to do it. And he's kind of already exited that conversation. I saw one list where he was on it, and every comment on it was, how is he there? He hasn't done anything. So Bryce Young, he played subpar. Sub of what we know he can be in a game like this. So you have to take that in. We got to speed along, though, down to our final 2 minutes. So we'll give him a minute for each. Ohio State's going to take the second spot. They beat Arkansas State. Yeah, they didn't cover the spread in this game, but I think that spread was a bit much for a team that I think actually had a decent offense. It was 44.5 as the spread, which is about as high as you can be to go up against another FBS opponent. They went against an FBS opponent and had a spread of 45. And an Arkansas State team I know wasn't good last year, but they came in this season with a really good offensive scheme and a lot of good offensive players. I got to give them a lot of credit.
Yep.
All right, and that leaves us number 1. It's obvious, right? Georgia. Yep. These Bulldogs have been bullying opponents so far in the season. I know it was Samford, and it was 33-0. It was a shutout. And we didn't see a lot of teams cover the spread here in week 1. UGA was a 53-point favorite. So if we're going to criticize Ohio State for not covering the spread against Arkansas State, we're going to double that for Georgia, because a lot of people were hating on the Buckeyes for allowing a handful of field goals to Arkansas State and not covering the spread. Georgia wasn't even close. Again,
I just talked about with Michigan, though. Their defense only on 17. They've only on 3 points so far, Georgia. So
yeah, that's the part where you're like, all right, well, that's why they're there. But that is all the time we have for. I think we're going to talk more volleyball, probably some more soccer tomorrow on your Sports Network. I've been Alec Berna. That's Mike Wolfgang. Power Hour featuring DJ Yoakley. Coming up next, he's talking power rankings. Don't miss out. We'll see you tomorrow.